a lot of movies you could have picked. This was either your top choice or very high on your list. Why this? Why Dangerous Liaisons?
Because I think it's a timeless movie. I think the story is one of the great scripts ever written. I think Christopher Hampton got an Oscar for it. When I read the book, with no idea that I would ever be in the film version of the book, it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever read, except for Dracula. And it's only a series of letters. So it's a movie that I think is exciting, it's beautifully shot, I'm very proud of it. And my first choice was Albert Nobbs.
Yeah, I couldn't have loved, I saw Albert Nobbs and tell you right,
Yeah.
I couldn't have loved it more.
Yeah, but Dangerous Liaisons is something that was a great experience to make, so I'm thrilled that you'll be able to rewatch it today.
So, like, I look through the beginning of your movie career, which begins with The World According to Garp, and in what can only be described as a really beautiful moment. Zelda Williams, Robin Williams' daughter, was one of those who sort of welcomed Glenn to the stage this morning. It was beautiful. And then The Big Chill, The Natural, Jagged Edge, I'm leaving a couple out, Fatal Attraction, Dangerous Liaisons. That's just through that. But even early in your career, it would be impossible for anyone to say, oh, that's a Glenn Close type of role. They're all wildly different. That's a point of pride for you, yeah?
Yes, I don't ever want to repeat myself, because for me, when you take on a role, you take on the exploration of that person, what made that person, what their background is, how they think. And if you get something that is like that, it's kind of the same territory. So I want to explore as much of the human condition as I possibly can while I'm still doing this. So my first thing is, does it repeat something that I've done before? Will it go to that same part of my heart and soul?
That is, interestingly, as you were answering that, almost verbatim the answer I got from an actor I interviewed one time, who we honored last night on this stage, Robert Redford, who I was always curious why he took a fairly long time in between movies. Why I assumed that he was like, you're not going to typecast me as just the handsome, perfect-looking man. I'm complicated, but that, and you brought him up, like you know, again, you got a lot of movies to choose from, but in your speech this morning, you talked about The Natural, and you talked about making that film with Redford. How come?
The thing about Robert Redford is that I think he truly had the heart of an artist. He told me that before he was famous, he would make a habit of getting in his car with his sketch pad and just taking off and taking whatever road interested him, whatever area of the country he found curious, and he'd stop and he'd draw and he'd meet people and he'd eat the food, and he could just disappear into that world, into that trip. And I think it was after maybe Butch Cassidy or whatever film that made him instantly recognizable that he tried it and it didn't happen. He stopped at a cafe, and within 20 minutes, 200 people were looking in the window. He tried to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and drive and stop, and the same thing happened. So I think he had this wonderful, restless, questy soul of a true artist. I mean, he got a huge national award when he was 16 for his art. And that's what he always thought he was going to be. But Redford, he was deep. And he taught me a lot on the set of The Natural. Of course, you know, we did the roles, but he talked to me about his three passions, which was the culture of the Native American population, the saving of our environment, and Sundance Institute. And he put me on the board of Sundance Institute, and I was on it for 16 years. So he really changed our profession.
Yeah, that's what Jane said last night too, that this is change the art form by commitment to promoting again and again independent cinema. So on Dangerous Liaisons, one of the great things, first of all, it's hard to see out here, but I'm going to do my best here. I tell you what, if you have not seen it, clap politely. I can't tell, that was pointless. But some people have not seen it. We will try not to spoil major things, but what happens in this movie is much less important than the experience of how the characters maneuver their emotions and machinations, right? Is that a fair way to?
Yes, I think so.
So, how in 1987, which granted isn't 1947 when it comes to censorship, but still, how in 1987 does this movie feel wildly erotic without really doing anything or showing anything that is outrageously erotic?
Well, I mean, I think it's much more erotic not to show everything, personally. It lets your imagination go wild, and usually your imagination is wilder than what anybody could put on screen. I find that kind of seduction much more powerful, the suggestion or the history of how somebody looks at each other in their eyes. And the game of one-upmanship. But this was kind of a deadly game. It was about two characters who probably would never find another one to love as deeply, but also to hate as deeply.
Huh.
That's your character and John Malkovich's character, yeah. How was working with Malkovich?
Well, I was supposed to be Lindsay Duncan, and oh God, wonderful. He plays Snipe. Alan Rickman.
Oh,
they brought it over from London to Broadway, and it was a hit, but it didn't have huge advanced sales, so they were depending on the Tonys. But there's a rule that there's only a certain amount of time that the English can be on stage, and then they have to be replaced. So I was going to replace Lindsay, see, I can't remember names. Somebody else was going to.
I can't remember titles, so it's okay. I can't remember titles, so we're going to be great together.
So, but they didn't get the Tonys that they wanted, and they shut the show. And I said, well, that's it. And for some reason, Stephen Frears came and offered the part to me. And I remember sitting in a hotel room with Stephen Frears, the director, and Malkovich across the room. And I remember literally saying to myself, could I be attracted to him? And then thinking, yeah, I think I could, you know. But they went on to start because I was pregnant and I was giving birth to my daughter Annie when they started the movie, and they did all of the scenes with Michelle Pfeiffer and whatever scenes I wasn't in. I was 7 weeks, my daughter was 7 weeks old when I went over to France to start shooting Dangerous Liaisons. That's why I have such fabulous wheel speed. I literally had weaned Andy like just a couple of weeks before, you know, not even that long. Yeah, so when I started working with John, I couldn't figure out what he was doing. And I went to Stephen Frears and I said, could I see what you've shot? Can I see the scenes that John's been in? So he very lovely said, yes, I could. So I went and I watched all the scenes that John was in. I said, oh, okay, I get it. And I, you know, was able to get into the movie with him.
I think that as you say that about Malkovich, who's an actor I really like, I don't know him, I just, his work is so varied and outstanding. Even movies he dismisses, like In the Line of Fire with Clint Eastwood, it's like a movie he just did for a paycheck, and I'm like, no, that's great. That's one of my favorite movies. So, but imagine, since we were just talking about Redford would never have been offered that role that you're going to see Malkovich play, but if it had been someone as beautiful as Robert Redford, right, or Keanu Reeves or somebody.
Keanu was in it.
Keanu was in it, right, but not that role, but he's in it. He's a baby in it, that's right.
Well, I have to tell the story. So Stephen Frears had organized a picnic, and everyone was in a bus, and I was in a car with my baby, because you can't, go on a bus with a baby, you might have to go home. But we all went by the hotel where Keanu was, and we were waiting for him, and out of the front door came this guy with like a backpack. He literally went, and I thought, I was sitting there, that's my love interest.
There is, you can't find a person in this town who has worked with Keanu Reeves who doesn't say, I love working with Keanu Reeves, yeah. But it would have been different if that character, the seductor that Malkovich plays, if they'd been that perfect looking, right? It gives this extra quality to his ability to...
It's unexpected.
Right.
And there's a certain perversity
100%.
that he could play that is that character.
Weirdly, so when I started watching movies in preparation for the festival, mostly rewatching movies that I haven't seen in a while, we had Barefoot in the Park last night, as I mentioned, here in this theater. And then because this is the next interview that I had, I watched Dangerous Liaisons again. I suppose last week, Dangerous Liaisons again. So it suddenly occurred to me that, oh my God, what the programming department here has done secretly is they're doing nothing but showing movies at the festival with Mildred Natwick. That's so weird. I figured it out. And I'm like, I don't think they can do the whole thing. We're showing Swingers. She was not in Swingers. But this is a TCM crowd, a crowd that loves and appreciates an actress like Mildred Natwick. What was she like to work with?
Mildred Natwick? She was wonderful. I don't know how many, if I had a lot of scenes with her. Did I have?
No, you're like.
There's mostly.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of. You guys have a couple of looks.
Looks.
Right? Yeah.
Well, she could certainly look.
She knew. She saw through you.
Oh, she's one of those wonderful actresses that just come with years and years of wonderful work, and she just brings, this certain great dignity and class.
Yeah, no question. And she's funny. She's certainly very funny in Barefoot in the Park. The less funny, as you'll see here. Did you grow up like you started in the theater? You became a big deal as you were a student in the theater at William and Mary. Like, as you said.
William and Mary?
Yeah.
Yay!
All right, how about that?
Yeah.
Were you at that point thinking you're committed to the theater, or were the movies, was that an allure? Were you a movie, did you?
No, I never thought of movies. I just wanted to do theater. I just wanted to act. I wanted to portray people other than myself. But no, it was always theater. I never thought of being a movie star. I never thought of any of that. It was just, I want to learn the craft of theater. I want to be an actor. And because I never was here really much. I didn't have Hollywood sensibility at all.
Were you a big movie fan growing up, or no?
Well, I never went to movies when I was growing up.
You didn't?
No, the movies that really got me from a very early age were the early Disney movies.
Really?
Because I loved fairy tales as a child. The darker the better. And a lot of the Disney movies, of course, are great fairy tales. Cinderella, Snow White. I love movies like The Littlest Outlaw and Old Yeller and even The Vanishing Prairie, the Living Desert, all those, it was just this great treasure trove of wonderful films. And I loved Pollyanna. I wanted to be her. And I wanted to knock on Disney's door and say, I can do that.
Well, you could have done it, but I'm glad you didn't knock on the door, because it would have precluded, I think, some of your other work. Hello. I want to wrap this up because I mentioned in the lead-in about your performance in a movie released the year before or after this. Fatal Attraction is right before this, right? Right before this, and you mentioned Alan Rickman, who was Sniper. Both of those characters are incredibly famous villains, but I know both of you, and he would say this if he were, if he were alive, and he did, but that you play this villain, and it's true here too, right? This is a villainous character here. But to you, in your head, as you're preparing, are you seeing this character as a villain? In what way do you
I never saw either of them as villains. I think the task of the actor is to be true to who that character is. And you can't go into playing a character having judgment on them. So I never in a million years would say, Alex Forrest is a villain, or the Marquis de Merteuil is a villain. No, Marquis de Merteuil is a woman who was sent away to a convent, came out into French society, high French society, and was expected I mean, it was a man's world, and she observed. She has a wonderful speech about observing everything that was going on. And teaching herself to have a face that didn't show anything, but she saw everything, and she was determined not to let men treat her the way they treated most women.
And she shared.
So to me, that wasn't a villain. That was a survivor.
Yeah, that's why, and Alan Rickman had largely those same thoughts when playing a character like that. So before we let you go, and I don't want to, I want to keep talking to you, but we're going to show the movie. So we're not going to reveal anything to those people who haven't seen it, but we're going to reveal one ending that did not happen, because you just told me backstage that it had been shot and I had been unaware. What was the ending that Stephen Frears shot that was then not used?
Yes, well, the original Dangerous Liaisons was written just not too long before the French Revolution. Which was a different whole look. The movie is styled in the height of the most wonderful era, which was the I actually have a dress, which was the mistress of Louis the XIV or Louis the XV or something, but much more refined time in fashion. But because it was originally written just before the French Revolution, the play ends when you're hearing the revolution outside the window while they're playing cards. We shot a scene where Madame de Merteuil is actually having her head chopped off at the guillotine. It was terrifying. And Stephen Frears was it was just the whole thing. They made it so that it didn't go all the way down, obviously. They did 2 shots where it came a certain way, and then I don't know how they did it, but...
And why not used? Too much? Too...
I guess it didn't test very well.